Hi guys, this is Mary Poplin with Imagineer Systems, and today we're going to be going over tracking heads-up displays in 3D with Mocha. Let's take a look at the final project that we're going to make. You can see that we have some planes moving in 3D space and some stuck to the windshield. What we're going to do is we're going to jump over here from After Effects to Mocha, and we're going to show you how we got that started. Now, the first thing that I'm going to do is show you my complete project. Now, we're going to go ahead and start from scratch, and this is important. A lot of you have asked how to start a project from scratch. You select your footage, and what you do is you're going to want to name your project, alright? And then the most important thing is that you go ahead and check your frame range, and then you're going to want to check your frame rate, your pixel aspect ratio, and you're going to want to change any interlacing. Now, you have options to change them that are preset, or you can do custom. And you're going to want to just go ahead and make sure that these settings match the final settings that you're going to have in whatever your compositing program is. Otherwise, the data that you take out of Mocha will be off, and it will be off by however much the difference between your settings and the settings in your composite are. So this is very important to get right, and it's one of the most common problems that people run into when they're first starting to use Mocha. Alright? Okay, so let's start the project. What we're going to do is we're going to click OK. And we're going to come into Mocha here, and we're going to pan through our shot, right? Now, what we're going to do is we're going to look for areas of planar data to track on this car. Now, we're going to need to track two non-co-planar planes in order to get a 3D solve. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to track the side of the car. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use the Add to X-Spline tool, and I'm going to add the tires, and I'm going to add this section around the door and this section around the mirror. Now, the reason I'm doing that is because I'm avoiding areas of shine on the side of the car. Now, the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and align the surface tool to the side of the car. I'm doing this so that as we track, I can turn my grid tool on and I can visualize what the track is doing without having to watch the splines and make my best guess. Now we're going to do minimum percent of pixels used at about 45%, and we're going to track translation, scale, rotation, shear, and perspective. Now the reason I track perspective is because this car is being shot with a handheld camera, and anytime you have handheld cameras, you're going to need to track perspective. So we're just going to let this track right through the shot. And I've sped up the track so that you don't have to wait. Alright, and now that we're done tracking, let's go ahead and check that. I just scrubbed through the timeline to check and make sure that the grid is locked on to the side of whatever I'm tracking. Now, if the grid is not locked on, what I will need to do is I will need to either use some adjust tracks or I will need to redo my track. But we're going to go ahead and lock this layer because it looks correct. We're going to turn the gear off and we're going to turn off visibility, and now we're going to track the top of this car. Alright? So I'm going to look for areas of non-shine on this car. That's going to be difficult, so I'm going to grab the front part of the car, and I'm going to grab the back part of the canvas top. And then what we're going to do is we're going to call this top of the car track, and we're going to do the same thing where we align our surface and grid tool more or less to a relative position to the top of the car so that I can see what the track is doing. Okay? And then I'm going to adjust that until I'm satisfied that it will give me accurate data. And we're going to go ahead and come down here and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to track forward. And if we have any occlusions, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the shape aside so that the occlusions don't mess up my track. Now, it looks like this is pretty good. Looks like this is locked on really nice and tight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here and I'm actually going to turn off these thumbnail views because those get in my way right at this point, and I'm going to lock and hide my layer one more time. Alright, now from here what we do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to actually unlock both of these. We're going to turn them both on and we're going to jump over to the camera solver tab. Okay, but first what we're going to do is we're going to make this surface smaller, because it turns out that part of what Mocha uses in order to solve the camera is a reference to our planar tracks. And in order to make that reference more accurate, you're going to want those corners of that surface to be as close together as possible. Now, Martin Britton talks about this in his 3D camera solving webinar, and if you want to know more, I highly suggest that you take the time to watch that webinar if you missed it, because it's full of valuable information that goes deeply in depth on the camera solver, and that's going to be something you're going to want to do. Alright, so from here we're jumping over to the camera solving tab. We're going to make sure that we select both of our non-co-planar planes because this is a handheld camera. We're going to need two non-co-planar planes to solve, okay? If it were on a tripod, we'd only need one. Now I'm just going to leave this on auto and hit solve, okay? And what Mocha will do is it will just chew through the focal lengths and the various pan tilt zoom or small parallax, large parallax solve, okay, and it's going to give me the one that it thinks is best. Now, if you want to be faster, you can just go ahead and pick large parallax for this, but we've solved for 99%, and we're just going to export this by going to Export Camera Data, jumping over to our composite that we want to paste this into. Okay, we make sure we're on the first frame and we make sure we're selected on the layer, and then we go to paste Mocha camera. Alright, so the way that works is we're going to make sure that we are in our comp, okay, and we're going to go to edit, paste Mocha camera, and now that brings in a camera and several nulls, okay? So we get one null for every corner of our corner pins and one for the center, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to take this data and we're going to do something useful with it. But what I think we need is a windowsill track because I don't think we're going to be able to hook up our HUD display onto this car using the data from the middle of the car. I think we're going to want to move more towards the front. Alright, so let's hop back over to Mocha. Alright, and let's go ahead and start to track this windshield, but first I'm going to go ahead and lock my car track, alright? Because I don't want to mess up the data that I've previously made, okay? And we hop over to our track tab, and we're going to draw an X-spline around our edges of our windshield. Now the reason I draw around the edges is because, again, I want to try to avoid reflections, and I find when I track really shiny objects like this car that the best results I get happen when I avoid the middle sections of reflection. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to adjust my points, and then I'm going to adjust my surface tool as well so that I can see what my track is doing. Okay, now I want to get a good enough track so that I can hook up a windshield HUD display on top of this car. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and track perspective, and again I'm going to use a fairly high percent of pixels used, and again that's the amount of pixels that Mocha is tracking in order to increase accuracy of the track. Alright, now we are going to start tracking from the end of the shot to the beginning, because in the end of the shot we actually have more data. You want to track from the most data to the least data, okay? So anytime you're tracking this much of a turn, you're going to want to track from the flattest area to the more turned area, okay? That will give you a more accurate planar track when you track inside of Mocha. Alright, let's jump back over to the camera solver and let's export this data and take it back over to After Effects. So we're going to jump back over to After Effects, and over here we're just going to go ahead and delete our nulls and the rest of our camera, and we're just going to repaste everything in. Alright, and what I should get is I should get the nulls that I just tracked, okay, minus the other nulls that I didn't need. Alright, so we're just going to go ahead and check that and make sure that it looks good. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and click on my center null, and I think I'm going to actually remove all of the rest because I don't really feel like I need them. Okay, so after I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hook up my footage of my heads-up display to this center null. Now in order to do that, what we're going to end up doing is we're going to open up the transform data on both of these layers, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into the transform data and I'm going to paste that from one frame to the next. But first what we're going to do is we're going to turn our heads-up display into a 3D layer. We do that by toggling the 3D layer switch on inside of After Effects. Now we have a 3D layer. So let's take our 3D data, which is going to be our position, okay? And let's jump that over to our 3D layer that we've just made. Now you can see that it's not moving properly in space yet because we haven't attached it to the nulls that it's supposed to be attached to, or the positioning that it's supposed to be attached to, okay? So what we're going to do is paste the position right back where it needs to go. Okay, and you see that now that is moving in 3D space appropriately to the car. And then from here, what we're going to do is we're going to actually adjust its orientation in 3D space, okay? So we just adjusted the position. Now we're going to adjust the X rotation, we're going to adjust the Y rotation, and the Z rotation until we get a look that is more or less roughly along the windshield of this car, okay? So we're just going to go ahead and toggle our switches on and off, and we're going to change our blending mode to soft light, I think. And yeah, we're going to change it to soft light. All right. Okay, and from here, what I don't feel like is I don't feel like I can see this enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate my HUD layer, and I'm going to blend mode it at screen so that I get some more of that nice motion graphic information on the top of this windshield, okay? So from here, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and select both of these layers, and we're going to adjust the positioning of them just a little bit more because I'm not 100% happy with the size and shape of everything and the angle, okay? So we're going to adjust some Y rotation, we're going to adjust some scale, okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that this looks like it belongs in the proper space, okay? Because that's what you're trying to do, right? You're trying to sell the look that this is sitting on the screen, and then we're going to put some holograms over the top of this to sort of sell that Iron Man heads-up display sort of look, okay? Now, we're going to go ahead and move this just a little bit manually, okay, and keep tweaking. And this is kind of like the boring part, but we're going to check it, right? And we're going to check and make sure that it looks correct, okay? Now, we're going to want to do something about those edges that are sticking over the side of the windshield. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump back over to Mocha here in a minute. But I just wanted to flip the composition of the screens first because I wanted those bars on the right side of the car so that I could get a nicer composition, alright? So we're checking that. I feel like it looks pretty good. And what we're going to do is we are going to hop over to Mocha, okay, and we're going to make a mask for this windshield, okay, so that we can go ahead and get a nice clean edge to what we're trying to do, okay? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to come in here and we are going to draw a spline around our windshield wipers. Now we're doing this so that we can hold the windshield wipers out of our heads-up display, okay? Now what that will do is that will add a degree of realism to our composite. Little touches like that make a huge difference, okay? Now, what we're going to do is we're going to turn off visibility on those other splines. The reason I'm doing that is so that I can see what I'm doing as we roto this windshield, okay? So we're going to come in here, we're going to do another X-spline. We're going to basically draw around the other wiper on the side of the car, okay? And what we do is, just like anytime we roto in Mocha, we link our rotoscoping shapes to our track data. So in this case, we are linking the wipers to the windshield track, okay? We're going to do the same thing for the windshield itself. We're just going to draw an X-spline around the windshield, okay? I'm going to pull my corners tight so that I get some nice X-spline quick shapes going on, okay? And we're going to go ahead and animate over time the differences where the shape doesn't line up, okay? Just like we do in any sort of roto in Mocha, alright? And we're going to go ahead and export our shape data. Now we export our shape data as After Effects shape data, and we hop over to After Effects. We make sure that we make a new solid, okay? Now I use solids to mask things out because I like using Lumimats to mask things out because they never interfere with your layers in After Effects, okay? And we go to Edit, Paste Mocha Mask, but we make sure that we paste in on the first frame or our data will not be correct. Now in this case, we're just going to drag this white solid down and use it as a Lumimat. We're going to do the same thing for this other duplicated Lumimat for the second layer of our windshield. Alright, so from here what we're going to do is we're going to check and see what that looks like. Now you can see that my edges are nice and crisp, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to come over here back to Mocha, alright, and we are going to start adding some of the sides of the convertible that you had seen earlier, the holographic sides. So we're just going to do some quick roto for the sides of this car. Okay, we're going to hook this up to the side of car track. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that our shapes are moving appropriately. Now, we're not going to do very much animation on this. We're just going to make sure that this looks like it's moving properly in 3D space. Okay, and it looks like it is after we've just done a couple of keyframes. And we're going to duplicate this. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing for the other side. Now, I'm using the Uber key to offset these frames by a certain amount, and then I'm going to use the Auto key to animate between these two shapes. Okay, so I end up with something that looks pretty nice. Alright, looks about like how I want it to look. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to check this and make sure that it's moving properly. Alright, and then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we are going to come in here and we're going to roto the edges of the windshield out. Now we do this because we've got to put this back hologram edge behind the car, so we want to make sure that we do things like roto out the seats and the windshield. So I've tracked the back plane of the seats, and now we're going to do some quick roto for the seats themselves. Okay, but first I'm going to correct my tracking data for my roto itself. Now, the reason I corrected my tracking data is because the skew was making my shapes move properly. Alright, we're going to export all of these shapes over here to After Effects. Okay, now I sped through that because I figure that you guys know how to use Mocha Roto at this point. If you don't, we have tons and tons of tutorials on how to basically roto in Mocha, and you can find those on our website. Now we're going to paste in these shapes. Now what I've done is I've duplicated my movie layer, and I have pasted my wiper shapes onto the top of this movie layer in order to go ahead and get splines, okay, that will hold out my wipers over the top of this hologram. Okay, so that looks pretty good. It makes a huge difference. Alright, next thing we're going to do is we're going to make a new solid. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to make the sides of our holographic car. Okay, so I'm just going to eyedropper the side of the car so I get the right color. Alright, and I'm going to export my Mocha shape data once again. Okay, and I'm going to go over to After Effects, and I'm going to go to Edit, Paste Mocha Mask, because this gives me spline data as opposed to effect data, and I'm going to come in here to Red Solid 1, okay, and I'm going to duplicate that, and I'm going to go ahead and get my other side of the car, and I'm going to copy that to my clipboard, jump back over to After Effects, and you notice everything is copy and paste from Mocha to After Effects, right? Alright, now here is the more difficult part. What we're going to have to do is we're going to have to remove these back sections, right, to make it look like it's part of the background. We're going to set this to soft light, like I like to do when I'm doing holograms, okay? And we're going to import our other shapes in order to cut out from this back wall here. So we're just going to go in here and we're going to copy our seat shape data, and we're going to go to our red solid, okay, that's in the background. And we're going to go to Edit, Paste Mocha Mask one more time, alright? And now we're going to set these to subtract instead of add. Okay, so we're subtracting the seats, alright? And now what we're going to do is we're going to check and see what that looks like. Alright, now we need to hold out the windshield cutout, okay? So in this case, we're going to grab our windshield, alright? Now, we're just going to go ahead and grab our windshield and our inner windshield, alright, and we're going to export this shape data. And again, it's just another copy and paste, Mocha shape data to After Effects, alright. We jump back over to After Effects. As usual, we make sure we're on frame 1, just like we always paste our data in. We're going to paste this data in, alright, and we are going to adjust our blending modes accordingly to make sure everything looks like it's supposed to look, alright. So now we end up with some really nice holographic edges to the side of this car. Now the last thing we need to do is we need to color correct this, and I've just used photo filter and levels, okay? Now we're going to go ahead and make this look more 3D by adding a heads-up hologram over the top of this, okay? So what we're going to do is we're just going to copy the elements that we want to put above the windshield from a previous composition that we got from Drop, and I'm going to go ahead and put these on the top of the windshield by using the previous transform data that I had from my other layers, okay? So we're just going to open up our other layer. We're going to steal our position, okay? We're just going to copy it. We're going to jump over to our holograms, okay? And we're going to go to our positioning. We're just going to go ahead and hit paste in here. And just like we did with our previous paste of our previous HUD, okay, we're going to adjust this in 3D space manually so that it sits where we want it to sit, okay, and because we've changed the position, it will move properly in the scene. Now we're going to need to go ahead and adjust the compass parts as well, so we're just going to go ahead and do that same paste of position, and we're going to adjust our points in space appropriately, okay, and we're going to keep going. Now let's see how that looks. Looks like we want to move that up just a little bit. I want to move that over just a little bit, okay? And we're just moving these in Z space, okay? Now we're having a problem with our compass parts in that they're going outside of the edges of the compositions. What we're going to do is we're going to increase the size of the pre-comps for our compass points so that as they move around the screen, they are not cropped. Now it looks like we're missing an element crop, so let's find that. That's going to be in the compass comp. Okay, and we're going to double click that, and what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we are going to widen that pre-comp as well. So now when we go back to our main footage, we have the compass completely uncropped, and it moves around on top of our windshield without being cropped out. Alright, so that is how to make a 3D heads-up display. You can use this on any reflective surface like motorcycle helmets or something like that. Now, you can find us on the web at www.imagineersystems.com. We also have a forums, forum.imagineersystems.com. We also have a Facebook. We encourage you to check our Facebook. Okay, it's a lot of fun. And we post a lot of videos. Now, we also post mocha tips on Twitter and all of our social media. That's at Imagineer System. And we also have a Google community. All right, it's just on Google+, and we have a LinkedIn community. So go ahead and find us on whatever social media you use, and we would be happy to help you. I'm Mary Poplin, and this was Planar Tracking Heads-Up Displays. Have a great day, and thanks very much for using Mocha.